ये मुल्क ऐसा है कि अगर 100 आइटम्स हैं एक कम्युनिटी के लिए, पूरे मुल्क के लिए, तो उसमें से पहले 50-60 तो वैसे ही बाय लॉ आपको वैसे मिलते रहते हैं। आपका बच्चा स्कूल में दाखिल होता है, उसको दाखिला मिल जाता है, वो पढ़ता है, आगे निकलता है। अगर एक्सेल करता है तो वो ऑटोमेटिकली उसको स्पेस मिल जाती है। ऐसा ही है, जॉब मार्केट में भी जाता है, compete करता है, निकलेगा, कहीं आके जो पावर इस्तेमाल होती है वो वहाँ जाके होती है। आम नीचे जिस जगह पे हम खड़े हैं कोई पावर यूज़ नहीं होती है। ये मुल्क ऐसा है, ये एक इतनी बड़ी मशीन है कि इसके अंदर आप एक पुर्जा हैं, अगर वो जंग लग गया तो आपको निकाल के दूसरा लगा दिया जाएगा। एक्सेप्ट कर लें इस चीज़ को। इसका मकसद क्या हुआ कि उस एनालिसिस में आपने जब ये समझ लिया तो आप अपने घरेलू, अपने दोस्तों में, अपने माहौल के अंदर उन चीज़ों को अप्लाई करेंगे कि ये तो मुझे पता है कि मैं जंग आलूद हुआ, मुझे फेंक दिया जाएगा, तो मुझे जंग आलूद होने से पहले मेरा क्या रोल है। तो ये सेल्फ एनालिसिस खुद करने की ज़रूरत है। तो हमें अपने सिलेबस और तरीक़ेकार को जो है वो अगर तब्दील करें तो मेरे ख्याल में इस मुल्क के अंदर हमारे लिए लॉन्ग टर्म के लिए एक अच्छी और खुश आइंद जो है ज़िंदगी है। वरना हम इन चीज़ों को रिपीट करते रहेंगे, अफसुर्दा रहेंगे। आई थिंक वी नीड टू चेंज इट एंड ऑफ कोर्स वी शुड वोट।
It will always be used, its value will be used against Muslims, against against Islam, and to suppress us, to keep us divided. Whenever we try to go 10 feet further, they will bring us back 12 feet behind. We have seen it over and over. I don't want to go in detail because time is not permitting. But this thing you have seen lately, that the destruction of entire Middle East, especially those Iraq, Syria, Libya, and all these states, in my humble opinion, were the part of the same plan. This was planned long time ago, and they are keep doing it. They have created a narrative. Yesterday was Saddam, today is Iran. They will keep us divided.
There was a statistic going on that said we have about 320,000 Muslims in New York that are registered. How many of them are actually voting? 10% maybe? Right? 10%? Probably even less than that. So one of the things I wanted to share with you is that I think now, between now and October 26th, is a good time for us to get somebody to register. Get one person to register to vote. When you register that person to vote, and if they have a Muslim name, it counts. When I donate to a political organization, I don't use my name. I don't have a Muslim name, so my wife donates on my behalf because I want her to be counted. If you want to do a donation, let's do it as a voting block. But it's important to vote. Some people have decided to sit this one out. And I actually thought that I'm going to stay home and I'm not going to vote. And whoever, is going to be the president is going to be the president. But I'm also concerned about down ballot, because there are candidates down ballot that actually care about Muslim causes. I've talked to a few of them, and they put their money where their mouth is. They actually support Muslim causes. There are also Muslim candidates that are running. So make sure that you get out and vote and study what the candidates will do for you. And if you're still not satisfied, you can write it in. You can just not vote for that candidate. You have choices. You can fill that box as many as you want or as little as you want. But that vote has to be counted. And that's really the importance. And I want to stick to the script. So between now and October 26th, I think it's important for us as a voting bloc to make sure you get other people to vote. Everybody here should be voting. I don't care who you vote for, vote, be counted. I know the situation in Gaza is tugging at everybody's heart. Use that as motivation. Use that as a motivation to tell people about why it's important to vote and how we can influence down the line. We may not be able to make any changes today, as much as we tried. I just think it's important. So learn about the process. It's not hard. You just go to Google and type in voter registration and figure out how you can vote. If you don't know, ask somebody from PATH. I think they're gonna have more events. We'll have voter registration drives. Let's just please get out there and be counted. And as a Muslim voting bloc, we can actually start a party. We can start, but it's not just about the Muslims. When I go to different groups, I talk to Jews. In fact, I was at a protest where there were more Jews than Muslims supporting Gaza. My mind was blown that there was like 10 Muslims there and then hundreds of Jewish people that are supporting Gaza. So it's not just a Muslim issue, it's a human issue. We can influence the election, okay? So look at Michigan. We talked about Georgia. We talked about Pennsylvania. It doesn't have to be in totality. It has to be local. So if this voting block, let's say we all live in a community of 200 people and there's like 100 Muslims here. We can change that. Local matters. So make sure that local elections matter. Engage with the politicians that are local. Ashraf and I do this all the time. We have politicians that are running for state assembly, town council. We engage with them because we want to be heard and we want to be seen. Don't hide. Make sure you guys are all seen, because if they see you, they'll talk to you and they'll treat you with respect. If you don't want to be seen, you're not going to get what you want.
Make sure all your friends, all your family register to vote, and when the voting time comes, they should come out and vote. No matter who they vote for, they must vote. A lot of communities have their own issues which are common to us. And if you can get together with them, they will be part of your community, and together we can, make a better process for voting system and for whatever you want to have in your community. So you must start from the bottom, and then you can, work on the swing states if you want to have the election for presidential election, and then, you work on the swing states. But you must vote in your community. You must vote whoever you vote for. So that's how you gain some respect in this country.
Now introducing formally Sister Afaf Nashir, who currently serves as the Executive Director for the New York chapter of the Council of the American Islamic Relations.
Well, part of CARE New York's mission is to empower Muslim Americans, yes? So, what does this have to do with the topic? What is empowerment? Empowerment really is acknowledging or understanding your value, your strength in a way that allows you to influence the broader society, right? And that's what we want for our Muslim Americans. We want first and foremost to value ourselves in our Muslim identity, as the Imam was saying as well, right? And then we want to take that empowerment and produce influence and impact in our broader society. That comes in different forms. For us, the basis of that empowerment is our spirituality. But there's empowerment financially, ideologically, and yes, politically. And you cannot wield influence over society when you first don't realize what value you yourself have as an individual and as an ummah, as a community, right? I am very blessed. I grew up really in a generation before. I grew up mainly in America, in which at that time masajids were telling Muslims not to get engaged in the political process whatsoever. They were actually telling people not to vote. And the reason is you didn't want to get your hands dirty in a non-Islamic government, essentially, right? My father grew up in Yemen. He saw the revolution. He saw the country change from a dictatorship king type of government into what is a democracy now. We can argue about what type of democracy and is it true and all the other issues. But the point is he understood the value and the cost of what it is to vote. And so despite everything else that was being told to us, my father would actually, even if he was in Yemen, he would go and he would cast his absentee ballot at the embassy, and he would call us and say, "Did you go and vote?" So I'm really blessed to have that basis, which is very rare, especially back then. And the fact that we're in a room that's still half empty tells you that it's still rare today. That has to change. Does potency, does strength exist for the Muslim vote? Is there potential for influence and impact? And many people will say, we're just a small minority. What is the point? We're not big in numbers. My answer to that is that it's not about the overall population numbers, and that was a discussion we began to have a moment ago. But actually, it is about the number of people who are actually registered, and then of those who actually go vote, and then of those who consistently vote. Why? Politicians call super voters. They see the numbers of those who consistently vote. There is a term, it's called super voter. Those that consistently vote in one election after another, that is who politicians are going to pay attention to because they can rely on them to go to the ballot box. So let's do some of these numbers, since we're talking about numbers. First of all, generally speaking, we have to understand that throughout the landscape in America, besides Muslims, generally speaking, voter turnout is not as big as you would think it is, considering that America is such a big democracy. In most elections, it's like 45% of Americans who are eligible to vote go vote. And I'm talking about the big elections. I'm not even talking about primaries. I'm not talking about local elections. I'm talking about presidential elections, right? Now, the last election cycle, we saw it tip up much higher. It got to 66%, but that's an abnormality, generally speaking. I'm told on credible sources that in that area, and they redistricted the area, there were masses of Muslims who were not only not registered, they weren't even aware that an election was taking place. Meanwhile, from our cousins community, right, our Jewish American population, which we can stand to learn a lot from, had synagogues busing people to the polling sites, with over 90% of them voting in those areas. Even if we voted, does it really make an impact, people ask, especially given how bad both parties are, right? When it comes to the Muslim interest, who really has our interest at heart anyway? What's the point of voting if they double cross us, right? Muslims are not here new. We didn't just come here yesterday. But yet we saw the massive discrimination and oppression of Muslim Americans really heightened since 9/11, correct? Okay. And I see that especially within my work, within CARE New York, because these are the types of things that we face all the time. Discrimination of every kind of form in the schools, in the streets, in the employment sector, right? And we saw that heightened even now with the most basic of American principles, free speech. Free speech doesn't exist when you talk about Palestine. The Patriot Act. Right after 9/11 happened, the Patriot Act is the massive force of laws that got enacted, which we all can say has been the basis of mass surveillance on Muslim Americans since 9/11. We had zero political power. No one was registered to vote except a few like my father. Even if we wanted to knock on the doors of our senators, we didn't have the ability to do so because most people didn't even know who their senators were. I would say that that's probably the same in large part even today. So the Patriot Act got done like this in a blink of an eye without anyone in official power even thinking about how Muslims would react. We didn't exist. Our reaction didn't exist. Move on, NSEERS, if you know what that is. The National System of Exit and Entry Registration, right? It's a security system that got pushed in the Bush administration. All of a sudden, Muslim American males had to register with the federal government and had to keep them apprised of where they went from place to place. Do you know how close that is to a registration system in which internment camps begin? When they have you already registered in their systems and they can locate you, right? I sounded the alarm bells not to be an alarmist, but to tell you that that's really how things begin. And yet NSEERS got passed again with not a single blink of an eye because Muslims are not voting. Muslim ban, just recently, with the last administration. I have a mother just recently who we had to sue, CARE New York had to sue the federal government. Why? Because her visa was about to be, she actually got approved. Her entire family, her husband is a citizen, took years and years to finally petition to her to come over. Everything got approved, everything was going the right way, and then Muslim ban happened by an executive order, and just like that, his entire family was shattered, and she couldn't get her visa, and the family couldn't get their visas. There are countless people like this. And you know why that happens? Because we have no political empowerment. And we talk about Gaza, which breaks our heart in every single way, which keeps us awake at night, which keeps the tears flowing in our most sincerest of du'as. Would we be sending tens of billions of dollars time and time and time again if we had political empowerment? Do not tell me that we cannot change things if we do not vote, because we know that political empowerment, especially in the United States, not only gets the attention of those who are very self-interested in their offices, but also has the power to change world policies. You have a responsibility to this ummah here, locally, to your own family who's impacted. You're sending your kids to these Ivy League schools, and if they dare speak about Gaza, even at their $80,000, $100,000 tuition rate, they can get suspended like that. Do you know how many cases we have at CARE New York fighting these disciplinary hearings? Why? Because Governor Hochul, for example, will not say a word in support of Gaza. Why? When there are over 1 million Muslims in New York. Because who's voting? Your vote does produce influence and impact if you do it consistently. And you cannot hold any official servant accountable without the vote. Yes, every elected official is self-interested. They will do what's going to keep them in their seat. That's the world of politics. But once the Muslim community votes in numbers, then their self-interest becomes intertwined with our vote. But until that happens, they have no interest from us or with us, because we do not help to prop their own self-interest in maintaining their seat. So, is the change in influence that we want going to happen overnight? And this is what I'm going to end with, because I know we're way behind. The answer is no. Definitely not. If you're thinking we're going to, and we see the beginnings of change because Gaza has become such a huge thing, the numbers that were cited before, please watch out. CARE actually did a survey on Muslim American voters that's going to be released publicly tomorrow. And they just kind of released to our chapters that one of the things that they saw was the equivalent races between Jill Stein and Kamala Harris with the Muslim American population. Why? Because Gaza is the #1 issue. Right? Now, I'm not telling you who to vote for. Like I said, we're a C3. But we can educate you. And the #1 step for that education is the importance of your vote. We need our community to have long-term vision. Even if we fail at this election, even if we fail at the next election, as they say, Rome wasn't built in a day. Our brothers and sisters from other communities, they didn't build their political empowerment in one night, right? We have to have the vision, and long-term success always has two components: a starting point and the understanding that stumbling and failing is a part of the process, so long as you're working towards the goal. Our goal is to become politically empowered. It starts with registration. I bring some registration forms. I bring a QR code. We have on our website many, many resources. October 26th is the magic date that you want to keep in mind. Your registration has to be received by then. I know my family, when we go vote by generation. My parents come, I come, and the eligible voters in my household come, who are my children. 3 generations we go together. I suggest you do the same. You bring in your parents. If you're in the masjid, organize with the masjid, do registration voter plans. If you're unhappy with candidates, think down the line and think who's going to be our own candidate from our own community 3, 4, 5 years down the line. Let's train them and let's groom them, inshallah.
how can we make, what we can do to like bring this message from the mosque and especially prayer, that how important the our vote is, how important it is, and convince our people, that voting is part of our religion. We need to up and vote, that's our right, and we have to exercise this right. Otherwise, we have no say.
Past themselves, past New York, right? The hosts of this event know very well about this because this is what they believe in. This is part of their